Hello, in this video we will discuss about the cellular injury. So what is the cellular injury? Basically is cell will damage due to external stimuli or internal stimuli. So the cell will adapt it for fighting to current problem and survive or die due to severe or mild injury. So if the mild injury will be occur, it means the cell will able to survive, while the severe injury will lead to cause the apoptosis or cell death or other things. So let's begin to understand first the type of injury. So the a type of injury uh, are three: mild injury, and severe injury, and moderate injury. So the mild injury will change the cell, while severe injury will irreversible cell, irreversible and unrepair, while the moderate injury can be reversible and again cell will become a normal, while severe injury will lead to irreversible repair or irreversible original shape of the cell. So here is the mild injury after the changes lead to adaptation. For example, atrophy. Atrophy means the normal cell will shrink, and in this way the major example is that during the aging, so the cell will be shrink, or on the other hand the when we will not uh, do exercise, so our muscle will be shrink. So hypertrophy means the nutritional excessiveness and water load and swelling. That is the best example. Example is during the competition of the bodybuilders, they use the carbohydrate load after the long term of the diet, high protein diet. So here the hyperplasia, this is the number of cell will be increased. For example, wound healing, liver transplant, lobectomy. So the liver transplant, half liver become again the clear. So here is the metaplasia. This is the metaplasia means the changes the type of cell, and it is a respiratory tract which that will lead to due to the smoking will cause the squamous epithelium conversion from the pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Basically contains cilia, so cilia can be removed and change the cell shape. So this is known as the metaplasia. Meta means the many, plasia means the number of cell, so many type of number of cell. So dysplasia mean the cell will unable to um, create original shape. So let's begin to understand the reversible cell injury. So what is reversible cell injury? Cell injury is that which can be again cell can reversible and again original shape can be occur. For example, here is a cell, a mitochondrial damage, not completely mitochondrial dysfunction, but damage will lead to decrease the ATP. But in the case of it can be recycled through a lysosome, and the cell will not completely damage. So in this way, here is the oxidative phosphorylation is the second, which oxidative phosphorylation can be cleared through a antioxidant. So here is a dysfunction of membrane ions pump, which sodium, potassium, calcium, and chloride will be dysfunction, and in this way it can be repaired again this channel. While on the other hand, here is the protein synthesis. During the protein synthesis, the RNA formation will not function, but in the later it can be function, and glucose will convert into the pyruvate, and anaerobic respiration will increase, glycolysis will be increased. So it can be reversible. So let's begin to understand the non-organelle dysfunction, and in this way the cell swelling here normal to become abnormal through swelling due to the water load or other things. And here is the endoplasmic reticulum swelling and lipid accumulation, and due to endoplasmic reticulum swelling, so this lipid accumulation will be clear during the fasting. So the loss of microvilli, so the loss of microvilli can be again repaired through a transcription of gene will produce the translation to produce protein. That protein is the flagellin. So here is the membrane blebs will be formed. This membrane outgrowth can be again reversible. So in this way the membrane blebs will be disappear again after the for example it is due to the inflammation or etc. So myelin figures can be created. So myelin protein will be wrapping around the cell. So the clumped chromatin again can be reversible. Let's begin to understand the irreversible cell injury. What is that? Basically, the irreversible cell injury means the unrepairable damage to cell and infrastructure. In this way, the cell structure will be damaged. After the cell structure will be damaged, the cellular dysfunction will lead to cell apoptosis. So remember that. So let's begin to understand the major causes of the irreversible cell injury. So for example, in the previous reversible cell injury in regard to the mitochondria will be damaged, but here is the mitochondria will become a dysfunction, and in this way the no more ATP will produce from the cell, so cell will be die. And cell membrane damage, will lead to produce reactive oxygen species, will stimulate the lysosome, and lysosomal enzyme releases, and this lysosomal enzyme will break down of the plasma membrane and other organelle, and in this way the damage. So in this way the cell death will be occur due to these things, and the cell wide system breakdown. And there are a lot of complications during the irreversible cell injury, but you can understand with these examples. So the cell death or cell wide system breakdown, in this way the breakdown of cytocavitary system, breakdown of cytoskeleton, breakdown of chromatin. So the chromatin, the genetic material present in the form of chromosome in the nucleus of the cell. While the breakdown of cytoskeleton will give the shape of the cell inside, because the cytome in the cell, and that is present inside of made up of microtubule, microfilament, and other things. So these will lead to cell death because it will be irreversible injury will follow. Number one is the oncotic necrosis, so the cancerous cell death, apoptosis and necrosis, programmed or injured cell death. This will lead to death due to pycnosis. Pycnosis mean irreversible condensed chromatin, while the karyorrhexis is the destructed nucleus. While on the other hand, the karyolysis mean karyon mean nucleus and lysis mean breakdown. So in this way, the breakdown of nucleus and absence of nucleus. So in cytoplasmic eosinophilia, the bright pink color will be shown during the analysis. So oncotic necrosis, apoptosis and necrosis, programmed and injured cell, and other these factor can lead to cell death because it is irreversible. So if let's begin to understand with a summary. So in summary you can understand and classify this function, classify the reversible and irreversible injury of the cell and mild injury. So let's begin to understand from normal cell in homeostasis or steady state. So this is the normal cell in homeostasis or steady state, and it is the functional. It will lead to injurious stimulus, for example heat, cold or other chemicals, or there are a lot of things, acid or poison will lead. This is known as the injurious stimulus or stress due to the reactive oxygen species and other inflammatory mediators will lead to stress, and this stress will lead to either adaptation. Basically stress will lead to adaptation, hypertrophy, hyperplasia, atrophy, and metaplasia. This all thing is adaptive radiation due to the stress, while the injurious stimulus, which that will lead to cell injury, and in this way the cell injury will lead to mild injury if this mild injury will be reversible injury, so it will be reversible, while the adaptation basically is the hypertrophy, hyperplasia, atrophy, and metaplasia, which that will lead to adaptive response exceeded or significant damaging in insults, and in this way the cell injury will lead to also irreversible, because it can be mitochondrial damage or other cell membrane damage, or there are a lot of things. Lysosomal enzyme release will lead to cell injury, and this cell injury will lead to irreversible, and in this way it can be a necrosis or apoptosis. Necrosis mean the injured, while the apoptosis mean the programmed cell death. So thanks for watching. This was the cellular injury. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Bye.